This meeting is being recorded.
Good afternoon. I will read the script for remotely conducted open meetings, public participation guidelines. Members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting must use their full name for Zoom access. The town reserves the right to remove any member of the public from the meeting who doesn't use a full name or acts inappropriately. As a preliminary matter, I am Andrew Lowell, Chairman of the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mr. Bossy, Dave Bossy.
Present.
Scott Anderson. Scott, you may be muted.
Present.
Ginger Andrews.
Present.
Peter Brace.
Here.
For staff, I see Jeff Carlson.
Present.
Thank you. Anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond. Kona will raise your hand if you wish to speak later. Introduction to remote meeting. Good afternoon. This open meeting of the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. For Zoom meetings, please note this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you. Take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. To cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meetings, the chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Hold until your name is called. Remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. After members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board, July 5th, 2022. Can we, I'll entertain a motion for approval of tonight's agenda, please.
I make a motion to approve the agenda by Scott Anderson.
I'll second that.
Motion's made by Scott Anderson, seconded by Ginger Andrews. All in favor, Mr. Peter Brace? Peter, you muted?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, thank you, David Velazzi.
Aye.
Steve, Scott Anderson,
Aye.
Ginger Andrews,
Aye.
the chair votes aye.
Andy, do you have your screen on gallery view?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So you can see everybody.
Yes, I can. Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of June 22nd, 2022, or are there any revisions needed?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think you'll have a quorum for that because I wasn't present.
All
I
right.
have to put that off.
Okay, there are 4 of us here still.
Oh, only takes 4.
Okay.
That's right. Okay, sorry.
That's all right.
I'll enter a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Motion's made by Scott Anderson, seconded by Ginger Andrews to approve the minutes of June 22nd. All in favor, Peter Brace,
Aye.
Scott Anderson,
Aye.
Ginger Andrews,
aye,
Mr. Bossy will abstain. Chair votes aye. Thank you. Under Chairman's report, we have election of officers. We were hoping to have a full quorum for this, so if the rest of the board is in agreement with that, we will continue this to our August meeting.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
In agreement.
all right.
Mr. Chairman, I have something to say on that matter.
Yes, please, Mr.
Um,
Grace.
Even though, let's see, do we have it on the agenda? So we don't really have it on the agenda, but I got a meeting, I got a email from Erica Mooney today saying that we needed to make a decision on where we're going to meet in person. And I said that we voted at our meeting, our last meeting, that we were going to meet in person and that we will meet in the trailer. And so I said, I explained to her that we're on our summer meeting schedule and our next meeting is August 2nd. I told her that I'm going to be away and back and available to take instructions starting on the 15th. So she copied her response to a person at NCTV. So I'm going to get some sort of dry run. But I said, put us on the schedule for the first of our first meeting
Okay,
of August. So,
all right, that's good. We do have this under old business.
okay, so I was thinking that since you couldn't get a hold of Mr. Payer, that maybe I'd go to Landmark House and track him down and
Mhm,
what was up.
okay, all right. I'm fine with doing that, Mr.
Okay,
Brace.
go ahead.
This is your busy season. I'd be glad to meet Mr. Payer and seek him out. So I'll do that. Marine Department report. Actually, back up under Chairman's report, surface water, groundwater regs, public hearing is scheduled for July 13th. I believe is this a Board of Selectmen or Select Board public hearing, correct, Mr. Brace?
Yes, and yet, like we learned, it was Ms. Gibson that brought it up
Okay,
in her town report, in her town manager's report. So it's a select board public hearing.
okay. I think there are a lot of moving parts that come along with this. There are a lot of factors, and I think it would be good if any and all board members consider participating in this, please.
Do we have a time?
Their
Whenever the
meeting
meeting starts. At
Oh, it's a
5.
standard select board meeting? Got it. Okay,
Yeah. I would just look at the agenda online and then
right. Yeah.
try and guess.
Oh, we watched it anyway. It's okay.
Right. Marine Department report. Not seeing any representation, any comments? Natural Resources report, Mr. Carlson, please, welcome.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Glad I finally managed to catch up for everybody, and I'll try my best to fill in for Tara for some of her information. So I'll do what I can. Let me just bring my agenda back up because there's a couple of things I wanted to touch on. Yes, so just for quick updates, obviously we're in kind of the full swing of the season. Our water quality program is full speed ahead. Thais is doing all of our regular sampling and TMDL compliance that we do and all of that stuff. We are also, full speed ahead on larval release. I know Tara will probably be here at the next meeting, so she can give you all of the good details on that. But I think excitingly, one of the projects that we've worked on last week is we continued our help with the Nantucket Land Council on their eelgrass restoration project. And we were able to go out and dive and collect approximately 10,000 eelgrass plants to seed out at the harbor and then try their kind of combination transplanting seed dispersal methodology they've been working on with Alyssa Novak from Boston University for some of their restoration sites within the harbor. So that was some good field work that happened there. Other kind of exciting news to touch on really briefly. We have finalized all of the nasty paperwork stuff and contracts and those things with Urban Harbors Institute. And Tara and I have a meeting with them this week to talk about how we are going to start the Nantucket and Manakat Harbors Action Plan update. That is a little bit overdue that we've been running on a plan that's on extensions. So hopefully we'll have kind of the public process and timing for that ironed out this week. And at the next SHAB meeting, we'll have a pretty good idea of how that process is going to get started. But for those who aren't aware, what the harbor plan does is one of its really main functions is it provides a reference. It's a state approved document. It provides a reference to places like mass waterways. So when they're adopting and issuing Chapter 91 licenses, when they're looking for what are appropriate public uses and public benefits gained by issuing that license, the first place they're supposed to reference is the Nantucket Harbor Action Plan to make sure that what they're requesting people to do as part of that licensure process is in line with what the community wants. So that document for us is really important from that aspect. The document's also what gave us the Shellfish Management Plan that was done was an offshoot of there. So hopefully we'll do a little bit of work towards that as well. But it's a really great document and put stuff together. So we're excited to get that process started and off and rolling here hopefully in the next couple of weeks. So that's kind of the real high level overview. I know there's a couple things on the agenda that you guys had. And I'm happy to take those. I usually take those items up then. Or if you want, I can touch briefly on both the regulations that Mr. Brace just mentioned, and also looking at the agenda again, the fertilizer agenda item that's there.
Okay. I'm more than happy with taking some things out of order if your time is limited, Jeff.
It's not super limited, but it's always nice just to kind of knock them all out all at once.
Yes.
And we can
Yes.
get questions on everything. So really briefly, the surface water and groundwater regulations that are scheduled for a public hearing on the 13th. Those are regulations that are about 4 years in the making. They were getting reviewed and put together and then got stalled out by COVID, but it was kind of a joint effort between the health department and our office and a little bit of town admin as well. And really what they were initially to tackle were things like to actually put regulations in place to deal with things like draining pools and what happens with the water and kind of setting standards and regulatory standards for pool operation and dealing with some of that is one aspect. Another aspect, and for those of you who've been around and seen it, is we do a lot of temporary dewatering for construction and those things. And the town has a permit process in place that unfortunately doesn't have any regulatory backing behind it. It's literally filling out a piece of paper for the sake of filling out a piece of paper right now. But to put some formalization to that and to start picking up what we're seeing as far as, you know, temporary and permanent dewater and kind of get inventory of what is really out there is kind of an aspect of it, but then to start to do a better job in tracking and managing that and making sure that things are being done. And, you know, just to get back to the pools, if there is a problem where someone pumps their pool out into a street and we don't have record of it, or, you know, their statement of dechlorinization, that's something where our office or the police or the health department or whoever else is tasked when it's finally adopted can go out and actually issue citations to that and have some teeth to go behind it and actually try to make sure that people are operating in the correct manner and not causing impacts to our stormwater system or God forbid sanitary sewer or to our ponds and harbors if they're just pumping into wetlands or directly in. So that's the goal of those. Understanding that when we originally drafted them, we had a whole stormwater component that we decided was it was too much for the one, so that's been separated off, and that's still kind of a work in progress. And needs to get done. That was something that the former DPW director had been working on. So hopefully we'll be picking that back up soon and kind of running with some actual standards for the stormwater system and really starting to look at improvement of the existing stormwater system in areas. And we're really excited and pushing a lot of these, especially rural areas, looking into things like bioretention and bioswales to provide an additional treatment that a normal, concrete or traditional stormwater structures don't provide the same level of filtration that's there, and to do it in a aesthetically pleasing way, in a natural way, and using natural vegetation to do it, we think is a really great option for areas that don't have space or separation of groundwater to do, those traditional methods. So hopefully that's coming. And then for fertilizer, I know fertilizer was kind of a big discussion this year with the citizen warrant article to prohibit fertilizer being commercially applied. That was passed at town meeting, is at the State House. Not knowing whether that's going to get approved or not at the State House, we've been trying to work a little bit internally with our fertilizer advisory group and the Board of Health, who holds that regulation, to be ready one way or the other and to look into it. After reviewing with town council and speaking to the State Department of Agriculture, we don't believe that we have the ability to amend the existing regulations, which is kind of handcuffing in some degrees. The state doesn't allow us to do that because we had to have those amendments done by 2014. And really, we hadn't even started our licensure program then. We were just implemented those in 2012, and there was a little bit of a gap before they even really got started. So for better or for worse, wherever we are, but it looks like we do have the ability to modify and alter the BMP, which is kind of the guidance document that goes with those regulations, because it's a policy and not a regulation. So we're looking into that, and we've had some really positive contacts with some groups that are looking to help. UMass Extension has kind of thrown their hat in the ring. A couple other private individuals have, the fertilizer advisory guys. So I think we're going to see some pretty interesting tweaks to the BMP to make that document a little bit better and get us a better program if the ban doesn't go through at the State House, to try to make some improvements there as well. So we're still working on it, again, just to kind of hedge our bets one way or the other. And if the ban goes in, that's a little different discussion. But if it does not, we want to, we hear loud and clear that that program needs to be improved and made better, that we want to be ready so there's not a delay or longer lead time than there needs to be. So those are kind of the major things that are going on in there right now. But I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you have questions about other, things that we've been working on, I'm happy to try to do my best to answer those or get those questions to the person that can help. And I'll stop talking for a little bit now. I feel like I've thrown a lot of information out there, so I'll slow it down a little bit.
Thank you, Jeff. The board, it's okay. I'd like to start with a couple of questions for Jeff. For educational purposes for the public, will you be creating, we've been talking about this a lot, as you know, in our meetings. It's part of our new heading under Health of the Harbors. And we've been talking about how it may be beneficial if a map were created to show how far inland stormwater runoff comes from that reaches the harbor, such as Mr. Franzuto has stated, back as far as the high school, can drain down towards Cumberland Farms, into the wetlands by the old railroad bed. And you're well aware of, as far back as Woodbury Lane, drains into Lily Pond and then out into Children's Beach and everything in between there, from Pleasant Street, Orange Street, Fair Street, down to the Washington Street outfall pipes. And we felt that, having a map, a color-coded map possibly, especially not just for everybody in the public, but I'm also concerned about how the infill development has increased density over the past 2 decades. Currently, I'm seeing a lot of houses being built without any gutters, downspouts, and dry wells in the ground. I feel, as you say, some concrete structures do not allow for as good of a filtering system as a groundwater or a ground level system, but we're seeing just an awful lot of debris and mulch and bubble gum and cigarette butts and everything else washing down the streets during these heavy rain events that we get. And a lot of that water is coming directly from rooftops. Is there also, as a second question, is there consideration to reach out to some of these homeowners and try to encourage them on their own to do something on their own property with their stormwater runoff?
Yeah, sorry, I have another monitor here. I'm trying to steal all my notes from so I can remember all these things. But I think those are really good questions, and the answer to all of those are yes. So I think to kind of capture the mapping product that you're talking about, Andy, is one of the things that we approved at town meeting this year as part of Article 10, the big capital article, and it's really focused at Nantucket Harbor first, is we are doing a project to look at, redefining what that watershed area is in modern terms. The last time we really looked at that was in the 90s, both surface water and groundwater, and then also doing a little bit of nutrient flow work within the actual groundwater to see, which different parts of the watershed are contributing what types of things, like what species of nitrogen are going into the harbor, and whether or not they're from, wastewater or from fertilizers or stormwater, and kind of what those percentages are, to really kind of tailor make what those neighborhood groups may or may not be able to do to kind of affect their nutrient management, but to actually have it based in real numbers and science and things that we can measure and things that we can measure over time, and look in on it. I think that's something that's important. So we are embarking down that quest here shortly. That'll probably be a 2 or 3 year project to get to the complete total end of that. But it's worthwhile to do. Again, the last time we looked at, groundwater contours on Nantucket was 1990. And then the final project of that came out in 1992. So it's been a while. It's long overdue. I mean, it's 30 years old. So just kind of updating that will be really helpful with knowing what's going on for that. And then I believe that, so with that, I think you'll obviously get a lot of mapping products. So I think as far as people being able to see what areas are contributing, obviously the watershed, all in all, always contributes to Nantucket Harbor ultimately, whether it's infiltrated in and flowing in or surface water. But I think our hopes are to have those areas and to kind of overlay, we already have, storm type pathway mapping that goes on for water coming in, but also kind of looking at that for water that's going on land and then flowing in, and how it's getting there is also something that we can do, and hopefully in a way that people can understand and people can look at it and see, hey, I live at One New Lane. I can see that my surface water runoff is ultimately getting to the harbor this way, and they can understand it and see it pretty clearly. With all of our plans and studies that we're doing and management options that we're choosing, obviously our best way to implement any of those is obviously educating the public. And I know it's something that, we're working very hard to improve, because it's not something that the town has always done super well. So hopefully we're going to take some steps to do that. I know we're bringing in a health and natural resources specific public information person to just help with those kinds of things specifically here in the near future. So hopefully we'll be able to get that information out to people that are better, and get in front of homeowner groups that are on the harbor and adjacent to, and try to get people the information that they need to be better stewards, or at least understand what the impacts are.
Thank you, Jeff. Board members, any questions for Jeff related really to anything on our agenda tonight? Stormwater runoff, excessive lawn fertilizer, the shellfish taking prohibition. Let's open up the discussion here.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brace.
kind of surprised you didn't bring up the dredging plan, but we might as well hear if there's an update on that.
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Brace.
Sorry about that. Too many plans and projects. So the dredging plan is a dredging plan in both the sediment transport plan. Now that's something that project is going to be kind of directly managed through our coastal resiliency coordinator is probably going to be our project lead on that. And what that project is kind of again, it's about, for the final product, probably about 3 years to get done and complete some of the permitting. But the first part is spent, and what we're going to be doing is actually mapping, the floor of the harbor and determining where sand is moving, how it's flowing, where it's accreting, where it's eroding, and the rate at what it's doing. And then looking for those points where, we call them nodal points, where it transitions and those percentages change substantially enough where you kind of have a net 0 point before it switches. And then with that too, looking at mooring areas, navigational channels, and other, areas of interest for dredging, and putting together kind of a 10-year plan that we can go get permitted at the state as a 10-year dredge plan, to then look forward and say, hey, these are the dredging projects that we're doing. This is kind of the sequence that we are projecting. But then we can also reuse that sand in a way to say, hey, we want to nourish a beach here for a resiliency purpose. And we know how we want to put it on and how we want to design that project, because we know how the sand is moving. And also when we're dredging, then, the traditional way was, I'll just use Pulpus Harbor, for example. Not this last time where it was all hauled out, but the time before, Pulpus Harbor Channel was dredged, and those dredge spoils were all put along quays. And, there's always a wonder is, how long did it take for those, those dredge spoils that were taken from the channel and put on quays to just land right back in the channel when it went around, right? Is using kind of modern techniques to look at it and say, well, this point is eroding at this rate and this is moving this way. If we're going to take this sand out to maintain that channel as long as we can so it just doesn't fill in, let's put the sand over here where we know we have a need for, X, Y, and Z, and it's not going right back into the channel. So we can try to dredge a little bit smarter and reuse that stuff for, community benefit in areas where it makes sense. And, there's kind of a new way of looking at how we place nourishment material too, where I can't believe I'm going to do this. When you look at a project like the Sconset geotubes, right, the way that those are nourished is it's a set volume for every foot, right? That's a project where it's right around 22 cubic yards a foot that they have to do that for every foot. But when you get over a really long length, right, when you're at like 1,000 feet, the first part may really need more like 40. And then the other, the other end may really only need like 10, right? So instead of doing a one size fits all across the area, you have the data to say, well, when we put this back on the beach, we want it to taper down. So the one end we may be doing, 30 cubic yards a foot. And by the time we get to the other end, we're going to be doing 10 cubic yards a foot, because that'll give us a better erosion pattern or a better distribution of sediments over time. And we have ways to measure that and make sure that that's holding true instead of kind of one sizing fits all. So a little bit more work up front, but I think you get a better product in the end. And we've seen other communities do similar, do some similar work where it's really benefited for them. Some of the Cape have done these studies and are really, even the National Seashore are really seeing improvements in coastal stability with a better understanding of the nearshore dynamic there. So that project is underway again. That's funded in this coming fiscal year. I know Vince just sent kind of his final scope for what the town's looking for to our kind of internal work group. So we'll hopefully have that out for kind of public consumption, probably by the middle of this month, and then have it out to bid here, hopefully shortly thereafter, once we kind of vet it out a little bit and make sure that everyone has kind of an understanding of what the goals and objectives are and what's supposed to be happening. So that will hopefully be starting soon. And since Peter mentioned that one, I'm just going to make sure that there's not another one that I am missing right off the top of my head. Oh, there is one more. We're also coming into the cycle again for an update of the hazard mitigation plan. Those update every 3 years. So there's some goals in that affect, obviously water quality and harbor health. But that process hasn't started yet. We're just in kind of the funding cycle for that. So that should be coming up either later this fiscal year or early next fiscal year for that to start to take place too. So lots going on and lots of busy people.
So is it safe to say, Jeff, that Vince well, first of all, how did you describe the dredging and sediment? You put a description on that.
Yeah, we call it's a sediment transport study and dredge plan. So we need to do the first part of it first, and then the dredge plan to follow. But I think what we'll see, in all honesty, Andy, is while we're doing the actual sediment transport study, we'll probably be doing some outreach components to try and prioritize and identify areas in need of dredging. I mean, obviously, we get a lot of calls about easy street basins, definitely in need of dredging. Pocomo Channel is pretty clearly, you're snaking around all over the place to get through there now. That's an area of need. There's a couple other spots in the harbor, but obviously prioritizing those is going to be a little bit tricky to do, but also we obviously want to meet the needs of the public and where we're getting the most bang for our buck, and that helps figure out which priorities are needed. So if there's 10 users in Easy Straight and 10,000 users of the Pocomo Channel, that obviously plays a role in deciding which ones are needed more. So we need to hear from people who are using the water and boating and doing things, which areas they think are most needed, or any information that people have, or what people are seeing to really kind of put that in order and help our engineers kind of put those dredge plans together. So that'll probably be happening simultaneously. And then once that study gets wrapped up, we can transition into kind of engineering and permitting on the actual dredge locations that are there. We'll have to do a lot of eelgrass surveys and shellfish surveys for some of those areas once they're identified, and that takes a little bit of time too. So those are kind of the moving parts that go with sediment transport and dredge plan.
Jeff, you were involved in the discussion years ago. I'll come to you, Ginger. When Cormac and yourself attended a meeting together, Cormac being part of the land council at the time, and I think you both agreed that it was discussion about the Monomoy eelgrass project just before it was beginning, and I was concerned with the Fifth Bend project, and only in looking at the aerial photos, not actually getting in the water there and checking, but just concerned about the depth of the granular sand that's in that area. Certainly, we want to see this project succeed, but I guess what I'm getting at is I'm sure this is part of the plan in measuring and possibly putting the sand through a sieve to decide how much is granular sand, how much is more like a silt or sediment, and if the areas will sustain eelgrass transplant, or should some dredging be done beforehand. That was my only reserved feelings on this project, thinking is the cart going before the horse here on this particular site, because of all the erosion that's taken place over the past, well, since 1991, on the inside of CO2. Maybe I can get together with Vince, show him some pictures from the 80s and early 90s to use for comparison. I'm sure he must have some overlay maps where he can overlay and see what was there for beach during the early 90s versus what's there now, and be able to see how much is lost, and just simply know that is all gone into the harbor. You mentioned the flow, where is the sand moving to? And particularly, I just feel that there are definitely a lot of shallower areas, and so there's certainly a buildup in some areas, but mapping and studying is going to be necessary to figure out where it's at. But
Absolutely, I 100% agree. And any information that people have is always useful. So anything that
Okay.
you guys could provide would be helpful.
so Vince is up for input. What about input on the surface water and groundwater regs? I mean, it sounds like you have it kind of nailed down, but is there still time if anybody has some particular information they'd like to share?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's scheduled for a public hearing on July 13th, so I would definitely recommend any thoughts that people have, send in or participate in that public hearing. And I'm sure the select board will take comments and thoughts. That's the process that we normally do. Is it, goes to the hearing, and it's been worked on by staff or consultants, and then obviously if people have any thoughts or concerns, getting it there. And just because there's a hearing doesn't mean that it's going to get finalized or approved, that night. So anything that you guys have or thoughts that you can get in advance is always helpful. We get a lot of good suggestions that way.
And where do we find what you already have prepared?
I'll have to check. It's probably up on the town website under the agendas and minutes for that, or Erica Mooney can send you the final draft as
Okay.
well, the exact one that the select board got. I would offer, but I tend to have a collection of drafts, having worked on those. I just want to make sure that I would send you the correct one. So,
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Board members, questions, comments? Ginger?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is Ginger. It sounds a little bit discouraging on the fertilizer regulation, and I was wondering if there was any further thought of whether that was something that could be addressed through the planning process. That seemed to be suggested somewhat earlier.
so that was what I was briefly touching on earlier, Ginger, is the ability to go through the local regional planning authority, so MP and EDC in this case. That's what expired in 2014. Town council has suggested that we could apply for a home rule petition for an extension specific to Nantucket to kind of reopen that window that was there till 2014. They kind of suggested that at town meeting, but we're really not very clear about it, in my opinion, because there's a lot of information going on. I understand. So if the ban doesn't get approved at the State House, that may be another avenue to approach if we want to modify it. But I think if we did, we would want to make sure that all of our potential regulatory amendments would be really ready to go. Because we don't know if we are granted that permission, how long it would necessarily be. Don't think it would be indefinite. But we still do have the ability to, modify and amend and change the actual best management practices document, which is really what makes those regulations go and make sense. So we still have a little bit of way to do it. So I wouldn't be completely discouraged. It's just a little different for what it's going to look like. And we still have the ability to petition the state to get an extension on that date. I mean, they've been really pushing hard to focus all fertilizer through Department of Agriculture and the UMass Extension. And that seems to be really what they're trying to stick with, but never hurts to ask.
Okay, Jeff, thanks for the clarification.
Thank you. Board members? Anything else for Jeff? Jeff, for the sake of some members of the public asking, considering the incident with the leatherback turtle, just curious if there are any adjustments or requirements that'll be made for in-harbor gear.
Sure. So, understanding that, we were disappointed to see that it happened, and happy to see that the leatherback managed to safely get away and get disentangled. We've talked to Noah, we've talked to a couple of the marine mammal groups that deal with sea turtles as well, and really talked about, design options for there. And really where we're focusing is trying to make sure that, we're minimizing the number of vertical lines. We're looking into potential design amendments to maybe, sleeve those vertical lines that are there. Again, we've set thousands of these things over time, and, this is the one and only incident we have. We haven't found similar incidents for this very specific type of gear, even in the New England area. So it's a little bit of a fluky accident, but it is something, we've even kind of kicked the tires on breakaways and things like that, but they're not designed to work in a situation like this. They don't, turtles, when they hit those situations, don't pull with the kind of strength on those breakaways that are needed sometimes. It's better on fishing gear. So like I said, we've looked obviously we want to try to prevent these as much as possible. I do think this is a little bit of a, lightning in the bottle situation here where we managed to just get unlucky. But we're definitely looking into it. I think if we were to ever set gear outside of the harbor, especially too, we would probably go to alternative designs for sure that include some level of, better security for, for turtles and marine mammals. But every group that we've talked to, like at the state and federal level, seem to kind of agree with us that the odds of it happening again are pretty small. And I think we can take steps to try to minimize it as well. And just do our best to deal with it. But spat bags for us are a really, valuable program. It's how we measure the natural recruitment of bay scallops and other shellfish larvae within the harbor. And it's a really important tool for us as well. So it's a little bit of finding the balance, but I think we can make some small improvements to deal with it. And then also we've even talked about doing more, regular inspections up there just to make sure that things are sitting correctly or they don't get bunched up or wind moved or something weird happen, just to try to minimize that. But it is definitely something that we'll actively be trying to do.
Understood. And that's all good news. You're on the ball with it and aware. It's certainly an isolated case, if not the only case. So and this time of year with the gear out there during the busy season, if there happen to be another incident, chances are pretty good it would be noticed by somebody in the public and reported immediately. So thank you for sharing that, Jeff.
Yeah, and again, just to add on to that and not to belabor the point, if people do see that, obviously call it in to the harbor master. If you can stay nearby, give the animal plenty of distance. But the people that are responders for things like that can get up there and try to disentangle any animal, whether it's on fishing gear or mooring lines or whatever. We tell people don't go try to be a hero. They're big animals. Can be dangerous situations. They're tangled up. But if you can just let us know if you do see it and then wait a few minutes for someone to get there so we don't lose eyes on the animal, we will respond and get people up there to try to end that situation.
Good advice, Jeff. Thank you. Board members. Any more questions or comments for Jeff, Natural Resources Report, or any related items on our agenda tonight?
Just one last thing.
Peter, please.
Any word on the FDA, DMF coming down here, looking around? No,
We keep asking, and we're told that the FDA is scheduling their visit to Nantucket, and we check in pretty regularly to see when this mythical visit is coming. And as of yet, we haven't gotten a firm date. So we keep asking, and we say, whenever you're ready, we're ready. So come on down.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Public comment on Marine or Natural Resources Department report. Not seeing any hands, we'll move forward into old business. The letter of support for temporary shellfish and anchoring closure at the new eelgrass restoration site. Has everybody had a chance to review it? Any revisions you'd like to see? If we're all happy with it, we can certainly vote on it to be approved. It looked good to me. Mr. Brace, should we have a letter for approval for this to be sent?
Should we, oh, a vote?
Should we vote on this?
Yeah, and Emily wanted she wanted me to let her know that I had it ready. Hold on a minute.
Okay. She wanted to know that we had it ready, and then she was going to send in her request to the select board, I guess. So I guess what I'll do is I'll be bringing it with me to Maine, and then once I hear back from her, then I'll send it into the select board.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the letter finally constructed by Mr. Brace?
But wait,
moved.
Andy,
Oh,
I'm sorry. Did anybody have any edits?
maybe include the board at the bottom.
Okay.
Thank you, Peter.
So I'll make a motion to approve it with that, to send it with that change.
I second that.
Motion's made by Mr. Bossy, seconded by Mr. Anderson to approve the letter of support to the Nantucket Land Council for the temporary shellfish and anchoring closure at the new eelgrass restoration site in Fifth Bend off of Bass Point. All in favor of this motion, Mr. Bossy,
Aye.
Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
Ms. Andrews,
Aye.
Mr. Brace.
Aye.
The chair votes aye as well. We kept this on here, Mr. Bossy, did you, for the liveaboard application, did you review what what Mr. Brace sent out for the last meeting? It appears everything that we had discussed, you especially, thank you for being on top of that one, but does it appear to be what we were looking for? We wanted to hear from you on this.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I saw that in the minutes. Yes, I think it pretty much covers everything we discussed. So that was good.
Good, yes, good news all around for that. Thank you. Any other discussion on the liveaboard application? Not seeing any. I think we can put that to rest. Excessive sand and scallops dredging plan. I think Mr. Carlson covered that pretty well. If there's any more discussion, bring it up now. Not seeing or hearing any. Returning to in-person meetings. We discussed this earlier. Mr. Brace pretty much covered it as well. If there's any, Mr. Bossy, you weren't here for our last meeting, anything you'd like to add about returning to in-person meetings? I believe it will be hybrid, so if you're not able to make it, you still can make it in a Zoom fashion, I believe, so.
No, I think it's great.
Okay. I do as well. Mr. Carlson, do you use those meeting rooms at all, or are we gonna find them accommodating and comfortable and?
Yeah, they're not
electronic?
bad.
Yeah,
I've definitely had worse meeting spaces in the town.
okay, I mean,
Nice,
I'm-
they're air conditioned, they got good technology in them, so
okay,
the trailers are they're nicer on the inside than on the outside by a little.
Are these the ones by Stop and Shop? When you say the trailers, or are these
across
other
from Downey
trailers?
Pike.
Yeah, it's the one that's right next to where our office
fire
is
department.
and the Health and Human Service offices.
Right, okay. The ones with no shingles on them, okay,
The one that is affectionately known as the ugliest building on Nantucket, yes.
All right.
okay, that one. Thank you,
That
that
is the
clarified
one-
it.
That is the name that everyone remembers.
The aesthetics of the building will not be in our purview. Having a proper space will be that accommodates us, and we're not very demanding. But and how about parking, Mr. Carlson, if our meetings, are at 5 o'clock, should there be enough parking for our 7 members if necessary?
I can tell you the only car in that lot today at 5 o'clock was mine. So there's lots of spaces.
Great, good to know. Thank you, Mr. Carlson. Any other discussion on it returning to in-person meetings? Is it possible, Mr. Brace, that our August meeting would be our first in-person meeting?
Well, I guess that's what I was aiming for, by telling Erica, because she says that unless there's some sort of vote in the state legislature, that we all return to the in-person meetings starting on the 15th. So I think I read that, and then because our next meeting is the 2nd, I said, well, this will work for us because we just voted to meet in person. So, yeah.
So it's safe to say and announce now that our next meeting will be in person.
Yeah, safe
Unless
to,
otherwise noted.
yeah, and safe to tell Mr. Payer.
Yes. All
He'll
right,
probably walk up there.
right. I'll pick him up if need be. So, okay, great. If there's no more discussion there, we'll move forward to health of the harbors. Stormwater runoff and harbor impacts. We've covered this 2 different places already tonight. Is there any more discussion? I'll just simply remind of the July 13th public hearing, very important, with the select board. Not seeing or hearing any other discussion. Excessive lawn fertilizer use. We've discussed this as well with Mr. Carlson. Anything else board members would like to add or discuss? Not seeing or hearing any. The FDA shellfish taking prohibition in the mooring fields. We've covered this a bit as well. Waiting on a visit, phantom visit, whatever we're calling it, mystery visit. No offense to them. I'm sure they're busy. Not seeing or hearing any discussion there. We'll move to new business. Coastal Resilience Advisory Board. Do we have an update, Mr. Brace?
We do not.
Okay, that's fine. Our last item on the agenda, goals and objectives. I've kind of just off the cuff brought this up, having 2 new members. Mr. Anderson stated something the last meeting that was on his radar, and just for the rest of the board members, if goals and objectives are felt individually that we need to get together and review them and update them, we'll certainly work on that in the future. We could have a meeting, we haven't done this in a while, have a workshop meeting versus an open to the public meeting. They're a meeting where we specifically schedule to have a workshop, and the public, I believe, can attend, but we don't entertain any public interaction. So if the board feels or wants to bring up in the future anything on this matter of goals and objectives, please feel free to do so. Anything to add, board members? Public questions or comment? Not seeing or hearing anything we'd like to recap for tonight or add to the next meeting agenda. I know that our next meeting is not until August 2nd, a month away. Please contact Mr. Brace or myself. If there's something you would like to add, also keep in mind when we do have a full quorum, we will be electing officers. Think about who you would like to nominate for chair, vice chair, and secretary. And so future meetings are August 2nd and then September 6th. Within that time, sorry, we didn't have this printed on here. So check resources out there for when the State of the Harbor Forum is. Hopefully it's not on the same date as our next meeting, which
It's
is
the 19th. It's the 19th, so
okay.
we're covered.
Okay.
At the Nantucket Yacht Club, I think 4 or 4:30.
Okay. This, of course, is put on by the Nantucket Land Council, partially supported by the Nantucket Shellfish Association and other local groups with concerns for the harbor. It's always an interesting event to attend. It's nice to see as many Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board members in attendance there. So try to clear your schedules for that. Usually doesn't take too long. It's a nice event to pick up some good discussions. So anything else, Mr. Brace, that you can think of that would be important to the board, other events to attend?
No, I'm not off the top of my head right now.
Well, it's summertime and enjoy our summer schedule. Enjoy ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy the next month. If there's nothing else to cover here tonight, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman. This is Ginger.
Thank you, Ginger. The motion's made by Dave Bossy, seconded by Ginger Andrews to adjourn tonight's meeting. All in favor, Mr. Bossy,
Aye.
Ms. Andrews,
Aye.
Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
Mr. Brace,
Aye.
the chair votes aye as well. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Have a good evening.
Good night. Thank
Later.
you. Bye-bye.